Welcome to Leaders Legacy. I'm your host Varsha Sarkar, and the topic for today is the intersection of branding and demand generation. Our guest for today is Santosh Reddy, who is the VP of Sales and Marketing, as well as a key member of the Asia leadership team at Capillary Technologies. Santosh has over 17 years of expertise in executing GTM strategies, new market expansion, managing global teams, and designing solutions for digital transformation, SaaS, and cloud technologies. Santosh here holds an MBA from Indian School of Business, and when he's not working, he enjoys reading books and watching live sports. Welcome to our show, Santosh.
Thank you for having me, Varsha. Thank you, and it's an honor.
Amazing. So,
Mm.
Santosh, what do you think? Which key elements of branding do you think have a significant impact on demand generation outcomes?
So yeah, I think when you say branding, Varsha, I think you're almost breaking it down to brand identity. And
Yes.
I think some of the elements of that are around, say, brand awareness,
Mhm.
brand strength. What is the brand recall? Like, can people
Right.
remember the brand? Can they remember what they stand for? How familiar are they with the brand promise? How clear is the brand promise? I think these
Mhm.
are elements of branding which become important. But one of the things I'd like to also call out is, this might vary by market. Just to give you an example, you might be well known in your home market, maybe, or in a market where you've had a large presence, and there may
Mhm.
be other markets which are newer to you. So some of these elements may be slightly differently performing there, and that's
Right.
something you should be aware of. And another factor, if you're looking at, say, technology, branding and technology sort of sales companies or
Mhm.
companies, the category also plays a big role. So
Right.
is the category which is well established, and are you a brand there, or is the category itself nascent?
Mhm.
So that might also dictate, how you approach branding, right? Are you looking to displace people already there? Are you looking to educate the market and grow the category? And hence, that's how the brand effort should be. But in a nutshell, to answer your question, I think the brand identity comes down to awareness, how strong is the brand, how easily, what's the recall, right? Like, you can run
Right.
surveys and see is the brand recall, and how easily do you convey the brand promise? Like, does your messaging or the logo or the title itself tell the prospect what you do, or do you need to back that up? So I think some of those are elements
Mhm.
which play an impact on the demand generation activities.
When you talk about awareness, can you give an example from your experience where the presence of a really strong brand identity directly contributed to higher demand for your product or services?
Yeah, so let me take it two ways, right? One is, of course, like with the work I have done at Capillary. So what we
Mhm.
can very clearly see that markets where we have had a longer presence, where we have, say, more clients, for instance,
Right.
we tend to have more inbound, right? More queries
Mhm.
which come to us. We spend lesser on paid media. We are invited to more conversations, RFPs in some sense, right? There.
Right.
And that sort of plays out. I mean, we are a growing challenger brand, but there are brands which are more mature. So if you are in let's say if you're buying ERP, you can assume almost definitively that a sales, an SAP would almost be part of
Mhm.
that, right? So I think that's the strength brand awareness would have.
Right.
Uh, you'll see a lot more inbound, if you just look at it as a heuristic,
Mhm.
and you'll also be able to, not need to spend so much on paid media and acquisition in those markets where your brand strength is high.
Right. Okay. So, when you're working with a certain company, how do you balance the need for immediate lead generation versus, the need to create a proper brand identity in the market?
That's a great question. I think that's not an easy one to answer as well. See, I think you have competing priorities, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, lead generation is short term, and it's a here and now, whereas brand is more long term, but probably has more lasting impact. Uh,
Right.
One of the things which we did, and I think fairly successfully, is almost to have two separate sub teams look at it, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because the KPIs are different. Like, let's take an example, right? You would have the same tactic, like maybe running an event for
Mm-hmm.
generating leads. Now, the demand generation team is probably going to be driven by immediate number of leads and how many of those convert down quickly down the funnel.
Right.
Whereas a team which is looking at branding is also probably looking at, do we have a presence? Is it the largest event in the market?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the lead gen is not as high as expected, but there may be other reasons why you might need to have a presence in that particular market.
Right.
Uh, so there are almost two plays which are playing out, and we felt that the best way to do it is almost have two sub teams. You don't need two different teams, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and because their KPIs are different. You also will look at some tactics differently. Like you might do things like, awards for your customers. You might look at engaging with analysts like, you have, some like the IDC, Forrester, Gartner.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these are more around brand building, but they would
Right.
translate into leads once that gestation period has been done. So it's a balance between short term and long term. But I
Mm-hmm.
think important for you to, see which one, where you are, right? Like if you're in a category where B2B buyers are going to buy basis, say, analyst recommendations, now that might take longer, might need investment, but in the long term that pays off well.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, you while you might be able to ramp up your lead gen machine by spending money, now that's not a scalable model beyond a point, right? You will probably need to invest in content, get your website better, get more organic traffic
Right.
going, because that's definitely a better long-term play. So to sort of come back to the question, I think we've looked at it to have two sub-teams
Mm-hmm.
with slightly different KPIs, which allowed their teams to, operate accordingly. And maybe the brand teams would then take a slightly longer term view about some of these activities.
Right.
Uh, and even at a maybe at a leadership level, then you'll have to, put on this hat differently.
Definitely. Also, right now we know that content is extremely important. So, can you give a few tips on how to build a content strategy so that it optimizes the process of demand generation as well as it kind of reinforces brand identity as well?
Okay. So I think again, it sort of comes back to the previous question where, I don't think one piece of content can do both for you, maybe
Mm-hmm.
and not at least out of the box immediately. So you,
Definitely.
you almost will have to look at the pieces of content slightly differently as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at branding, you'll almost have to look at who's your ICP, and what does your brand stand for, and maybe you'll have to experiment with different formats there. So let's say if you're looking to be a leader in a particular category,
Right.
um, you might want your prospects to come in and read about you, telling them about the category and what's going to happen next, right? So these might be long form content, these might be white papers, these might be deep content, which which
Mm-hmm.
which needs to be served up. For me, content as a lead acquisition channel is usually about distribution.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have a great piece of content. Can you maybe cut it up into pieces? Can you put it up at the places where there's a lot of traffic? Can you spend a little bit of money and get people to use gated content, or
Right.
use gating as a means? So getting leads is a little bit all about distribution. Are you going to use your
Mm-hmm.
emails better? Are you going to run newsletters better? Whereas
Right.
branding objectives on content is looking at who's your ICP, looking at where you are as a brand,
Mm-hmm.
and then that dictating the type of content which you need to write. If you're going to be an innovative brand, then it might mean that you need to go and build industry leading or
Right.
type of articles, right? And maybe once you have that, then you take some of those and then put it up on maybe forums where a lot of your ICPs are
Mm-hmm.
coming, and then get them to click on it and then use that as a lead gen.
Definitely.
Again, you will have to look at it as two motions, Varsha.
Right. Definitely.
Mhm.
Santosh, coming to my last question, what tips would you have for B2B startups who are looking to strike a good balance between demand generation as well as to build their brand identity?
Yeah.
And that too, they have to do it on a limited budget. Now, that's the trick.
No, I was hoping you wouldn't throw that in, but now that you put a constraint in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I would say is, if you're looking at companies out of, India or this part of the world,
Mhm.
I think a lot of us, and given that a lot of us come from the engineering background or an MBA background, we
Mhm.
tend to gravitate very quickly towards demand, which is very quantitative, which is very number
Mhm.
driven, and
Yeah.
we don't really tend to focus on the brand. But if you look at
Mm.
the the leading technology brands in the world today, right? They are known because of the branding activities and probably less because of the tactics. If you think
Hmm.
ERP, you think SAP, right?
Yeah.
And they've got there by investing there. So I think the first thing is to try and have an equal focus on trying to build a brand. I think that's something which we can definitely learn from our Western counterparts there, the effort
Hmm.
and focus which they put in there. Uh, and second is almost coming back to the previous question, right? Where we said if you have a strategy, are
Hmm.
you balancing it enough? Are you
Hmm.
are you almost putting on this short-term versus mid-term hat? You need to pump up the demand gen engine, so you're going to do a few things. But
Right.
maybe taking a step back, when you're doing a review to say, are some of these tactics scalable? Uh,
Hmm.
or if it means generating leads would mean keep spending more money. I don't think that's the right way. And then sort of, putting an expiry date on some of these, saying maybe I'll spend a little bit more money right now, but if my brand or content gets better, over time, will my paid spend start to come down?
Hmm.
Yeah, so you'll have to look at those two. Look at what are your immediate priorities. I mean, of course, if you need to get things off the ground, get leads going, then it's pretty straightforward, right? You need to
Hmm.
you need to focus on DG, but not forgetting brand, I think, is my biggest learning, right? And that's something which, at least for me, didn't come naturally. Uh,
Definitely, definitely. I completely agree with you. Thank you for sharing your insights and knowledge, Santosh. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would find that helpful, especially the last question was for startups. If you're looking to see where you want to start, then you should definitely check out this video. This concludes our today's episode. And if you do like it, then please subscribe to our channel. Until next time.